Welcome back to the Christian Century YouTube channel. I am John, and I'm joined today once more by my favorite poet, Bonnie Thurston. No offense to the other poets I sometimes chat with on this channel. Um, Bonnie has joined us before, but today we're going to be talking about her latest published poem in the Christian Century, Facing Failure. Bonnie has written or edited 24 books of theology and 8 books of poetry, with a brand new book out that we will mention at the very end of the chat. Bonnie, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Been gardening this afternoon, so I'm a happy girl.
Oh, excellent. Well, I think we'll start off as we normally do, if it's okay with you, Bonnie, and ask you to read this poem for us.
Alrighty, the poem is called Facing Failure. My crumbling castle is perched on a hill, hidden from the road by long ago planted climbing roses. I sit sentinel on a rusty bench. This time of year, look down into the beds of pickup trucks, full of planks and plants, repairs for old things, beginnings of new. Nearby, a nesting wren is flummoxed because the small hole in the birdhouse won't accommodate her lovingly carried long twig. Repeated attempts to make it fit fail. Tiny avian wisdom accepts unyielding reality. Dropping her burden, she perches on a fence and sings.
Thank you for reading that for us, Bonnie. Um, I think it was you in a previous discussion we had who graciously schooled me that the narrator's voice in a poem is not necessarily the poet themselves. So I don't want to assume that you sat at a crumbling castle looking down, but I did want to ask what occasioned the writing of this poem. Was there something that inspired it, an experience? I'd love to just hear a little more about the context.
Yeah, well, actually, the first paragraph, the first stanza of the poem is just telling the truth. I live in an old house. It's not a castle. A crumbling castle is poetic license, but uh, I think that poems always tell the truth, but they aren't always factual. And in this case, it's absolutely factual. I was sitting on the front step. I live above the road, and I was looking down into the beds of the pickup trucks in the spring. And this is the time of year here where people plant gardens, or they re-roof their houses, or put some new siding on the shed or something like that. So I was looking down into the bed of the pickup trucks. So you're absolutely right. I think it's a mistake generally to assume that the voice of the poem is the biography of the poet. I'd be horrified if people thought that of some of the things I've written. But, in this case, what I was doing was just setting the scene. Older lady sitting on porch watching traffic. Bird comes by. And actually, that is indeed what happened. There's a bird feeder at the end of, pardon me, at the end of my porch. And this dear little house wren had a big long twig in her beak, and she just couldn't make it fit into the bird feeder.
Mm,
So
wow.
all of that part is factual, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, nice. True story this time around in the factual sense. And so the poem is called Facing Failure, and the bird, the wren in the poem faces failure by ultimately realizing it's a failure, setting down her burden and singing. And I was
Yeah.
curious what was significant to you about that, or what could we learn something about the way that this wren kind of faced this failure?
Well, I think it's important to know when to quit. There's a private school here in the town where I live, and the motto of the private school is never give up. And I think that's a horrible motto, because sometimes if we're on the wrong road, if we stay on it, nothing gets better. Or sometimes there are just intractable difficulties. And the image of the bird who knew when to quit was really powerful for me. Not only did she quit trying to, after many tries, I mean, I watched her for several minutes, try to get that stick in the birdhouse. And when she realized she couldn't do it, she just perched on the nearby fence and sang. I mean, the image of singing in the face of failure, to me, was wonderful. There is a sense sometimes that, what is the definition of somebody being crazy, doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different to happen, or something to change? It seemed to me that little house wren knew exactly when to stop attempting something that wasn't going to work, and not only to quit, but then to do the very thing she was made to do, which is to sing. I thought it was a beautiful image for lots of us. I don't like failing and I don't like quitting. And when I do quit, I normally feel bummed out. I normally don't feel like I should sing. So that was the sort of happy lesson from the little birdie.
Yeah, thank you. That's
You're welcome.
a lot to think about. And I appreciate just the questioning of the motto, never give up. It's yeah, that could probably be an unhealthy motto to try to live by.
Well, I think, we give it our best shot. We do what we do, and we do it as well as we can, or life gives us circumstances that are difficult, and we face them with as much grace and knowledge as we can, but sometimes we can't change the situation, and we can't do what we'd hope to do. And so, you at some point you have to sort of quit beating yourself up about it and move on. But not only move on, but find in the moving on something to sing about. I think that's a wonderful image.
Yeah, and it makes me think of just finding something that brings you joy as well.
Exactly.
I assume the wren experiences joy singing. I don't know, but
Well, they certainly sound like it. I live on the edge of the woods, and lots of the birds sing this time of year, and it sounds to me like they're singing. There's a wonderful Chinese proverb that actually I have here beside my desk, and it says, a bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. And somehow that's kind of a gloss on this poem. The bird doesn't sing to give an answer to something, but it sings because it's been given a song to sing. It's what it's been given to do in the world. So
yeah, no, thank you
you're
for
welcome.
unpacking that. Well, I'm sure we could talk about a lot of different things, but I would love to hear the poem again if you're up for reading it for us the last time.
Absolutely, very happy to do it. So remember, crumbling castle is a metaphor. That's the piece of it that is in. I certainly don't live there's no moat, there's no keep, there's no any of that business. Okay, facing failure. My crumbling castle is perched on a hill, hidden from the road by long ago planted climbing roses. I sit sentinel on a rusty bench this time of year, looking down into the beds of pickup trucks full of planks and plants. Repair for old things, beginnings of new. Nearby, a nesting wren is flummoxed because the small hole in the birdhouse won't accommodate her lovingly carried long twig. Repeated attempts to make it fit fail. Tiny avian wisdom accepts unyielding reality. Dropping her burden, she perches on a fence and sings.
Okay, I said we were done talking about it, and you don't have to respond to this, Bonnie, but I just that time was struck with the similarities between us and the narrator and a bird. Like the house is perched on a hill the way that a bird is perched. The pickup trucks with all their little pieces that are going to be used to patch things, it's a lot like birds nesting. So I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you. I mean, there's always a sort of subconscious thing going on with poems, but that was kind of an attempt to very gently not tell the reader, oh, look how people are like birds. That makes a bad poem in my view, but to have parallels that a perceptive reader like you are, John, can pick up, I think is one of the essential things that poetry helps us do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's sort of preachy, the poem that ends with a do this or don't do that. I find not as successful as it might be.
Mm. Well, I'm not sure how perceptive I am. This was I've read this poem many times now, but it's got replay value, you know? You keep going back and reading it again and again, and new things will stick out to you. So that's the
Well, good,
power of
thank you.
poetry, right?
It is indeed the power of poetry if it works.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for chatting today, Bonnie. Um, for those of you out there who have not read the poem in written form and want to go back to it a few more times to see what else jumps out to you, there will be a link below in the video description where you can read the poem. And there will also be a link where you can learn more about or order Bonnie's new book, The Stones of the Last Week from Liturgical Press. Thanks so much, Bonnie. Always great to chat with you.
Thanks, John.